Welcome to our today's session, and we are going to learn about for loops, while loop, do while loop, and for each loop in C#. So to begin with, we'll just start with for loops. So today we are going to learn about for loop in C#. So remember to watch our previous videos if you are new to this channel. So in C#, for loop is used to execute a statement or a group of statements repeatedly until the defined condition returns a true. So we can just begin with an example. So the syntax of doing this is you begin with the for keyword, then initialization, then comma, condition, this should be initialization, then comma, then iteration. Then we now iteration. So this iteration can either be incremental or decremental. Then you now repeatedly execute this block of code inside here. So this is just the syntax. We'll be doing our first example. So this is where you write the block of code that you want to be repeatedly executed. So this is the syntax for defining for loop in a C#. So to have an example, let's just dive in to write one of the for loops. So we'll start with for keyword. Then we want to repeatedly output all the numbers below 5 or equal to 5. That is counting from 1 to 5. So how will we do that? So we do the initialization int I, then comma, then if I is less than or equal to 5, then we want to increment. So we write for us from 1 to 5. Sorry, here should be like this. Then the block of code here that we want to output. So it will give us, so just put in our output. We say, so some spacing here. So this. So then this I, we want to start writing it from 1. So here we say I value is, then we do the interpolation here, then we provide the value which should be 0, then I. So that is where our value will be provided. So if we try to execute this, you can see the value is, so our value will be assigned. So it will actually repeatedly execute this block of code until this condition is actually true. So it has actually repeatedly executed 1 up to 5. So it will give us all the values less or equal to 5. So we defined a for loop to iterate over 5 times to print the values of a variable I. So in this example that we have just provided, I is equals to 1 is the initialization part. So this is the initialization part. So here, this is the initialization. Let me just put this in string. This is the initialization part, then I minus, that is I is less or equal to 5 is the condition. So this is the condition part. Sorry, condition part. So then I plus plus is the iterator part. So this is where we are doing the iteration. So it is the iterator part. So this is the syntax on how we have done this. So from this example, you can see that a for loop executed 5 times. So let me just do this. Let me get rid of this. So then we just do this. So you can see for loop executed 5 times. So in C# we can declare and initialize multiple variables and iterate expression by separating with the comma. So for example, we can want to have, we can just modify this. Int I is equals to 1. Then we say j is equals to, is equals to 0. So this one should be, so we are defining multiple variables. So you can refer to our previous videos of declaring variables. So int I is equals to 1, j is equals to 0. Then we want to iterate over multiple times when I, this is the condition, I is less or equal to 4. Then we increment I and also j. Sorry. And also j. So then our output will be I can just give the value of I there, and we also give the value of j. J will be, sorry, so j will be, we say here 1. So this one will be I, then we supply j there. So if we execute this, you can see I is 1 and j is 0. That is for the first time when the code executes. So you can see we have actually printed it 5 times. So I is equals to j, I is equals to 1, j is 0, I is 2, j is 1. So it has actually executed 5 times. So from this example, you can see that we have just defined 2 variables and 2 iterator expressions. So these are the 2 iterator expressions, and these are 2 variables by separating them with a comma. So this is how we can use multiple variables and multiple iteration in C# for loops based on our requirements. So this is how you do the. So another thing that we might need to see is the for loop with break statement. So in C#, by using break keyword, we can stop the execution of a for loop statement based on our requirements. So for example, if we have this for I, then we can just remove these. Let's get rid with multiple iterators. Then we say if, so we want to execute if I is equals to 3, then we want this for loop to break. Else we want it to give us the output console. Then we say I value. So what I'll do here, we say I value is equals to, just apply our value there. So this will be I. So what this will do, if it iterates repeatedly, then it finds that I is equals to 3, then this code will break. That means it will stop executing. So if we just run this, so you can see it has actually given us I is equals to 1, I is equals to 2. So when it found out that I is equals to 3, then it actually broke. So it didn't give us the output. So you can just observe that we used a break statement to exit. So this one will actually do the exit. That's the correct term to use. So it will exit the loop whenever the variable is equals to 3. So this is actually how you use a break statement when using for loop. So the loop execution will actually stop automatically when the variable I actually equals to 3. So another thing that you might want to see is for loop without initialization and iterators. So generally the initializer, condition and iterator parameters are optional to create for loop in C#. So for example, if I just declare a variable here, int I say it is equal to 1, then I say for I put this, then I say I is less or equal to 5. You can see I've done this. So here I'm not defining any initialization. I've done any initialization, and the iterators are not there. So then inside this for loop, what I can do is I say I put in now my iterator here. So I, that is it. Then I say give me the output. So I value is, so if I just run this, yes, so you can see I has actually executed. So if I is less or equal to 5, then it has given us the execution. So here we have actually defined a for loop without any initializers or iterators. So that is how you do it. So this is how we actually implement for loop without initializers and iterators based on any requirement that you want. So there's something that we might need to understand about for loop. So in C# we have infinite for loop. So if the condition parameter in for loop always return true, then for loop will be infinite. That means it will run forever. So even if we miss the condition parameter in for loop, automatically the loop will become an infinite loop. So how do we define that? So we can declare, we say, can return our initialization here. We say int I, and we assign it a value. Then we say I is greater than 0. So we want to define an infinite loop. So if we say I is greater than 0, let me just zoom in, sorry, might not be physical. Okay, that's it. So if we say I is greater than 0, then we increment. So we put in our iterator here. So, and we remove this. So if I execute this, it will be, you can see our code is running infinitely. So this code will not actually stop. So it will run forever, because int I is 1, and if I is always greater than 0, it will automatically execute. So this is how you define infinite for loop. So the condition is actually I is greater than 0, and whatever we define in for loop will always become true and return infinite results. So another thing that we might need to know is nested for loop. So in C# we can create one for loop with another for loop based on how we want it to be defined. So how do we define nested for loop? So for int I, just using our example, for int I is equals to 1, then we say this I is less or equal to or equal to 5, then I we iterate, then we say for. So inside that we say for int j is equals to, we assign it to I. So then if j is less than 3, then we increment. So this one will be another this is now a nested for loop. So what it will do, it will come here for in j will always have I as a value. So I value will always be assigned to j. Then if j is less or equal to 3, then it will come inside here and do the iteration. So if we just execute this, you can see I value is 1. So it has actually executed, and we can see it has given us the value only if I is less or equal to 3. So we have just created a for loop with another for loop and printing the values based on what we have defined. So we'll get the results as indicated here. So that is how you define a nested for loop. So that is all about a for loop. So something we might need to know also is what we call while loop. So while loop. So let me just change here. So we are learning about while loop. So in C# while loop is used to execute a block of statement until the specified expressions returns true. So how do we do that? So in our previous example, we just learned for loop, and generally for loop is useful when we are sure about how many times we need to execute the block of statements. So that is the difference with while loop. So the while loop, the number of the number of times that we want to execute the block of statements is actually unknown. So how we want it to do, so here you can say we initialize our variable here, hi is equals to 1, sorry, is equals to 1. Then we say while, so we don't know the number of times that these will run. So in for loop, we are actually aware. So I is less than or equal to, while this is less or equal to 4, or we say 4, then we want it to provide for us these statements. So it will give us this output. So we say I value then is equals to, provide here, then we say here it's 0. So then we increment. So we will increment this. Sorry. We increment this. So we are executing the statements within the while loop. So here we are executing the statement within the while loop by checking the condition. So this is the condition. I is less or equal to 4, and increasing the variable I value to 1 by using the increment operator. So if we execute this, so you can see I value is always 0. So there's something wrong. So if while I is less or equal to 4, we want to, sorry, here should be I. So if I run this, yes, so we have the desired output. So I value is 1, I value is 2, I value is 3, and I value is 4. So you see it will actually execute while this is less or equal to 4. So as you have seen, while loop has been executed until it matches the defined condition, this one. So and this will now come out after the condition returns true. So we can also do a nested while loop the same way we did for loop. So inside here, assume we have this as while I is less than 4, we actually do the execution and provide the output. Then we say, let's do another initialization. Inside here, int j is equals to 1. Then we say while, these are nested while loop. So while j is less than 2, so what do we want to do? So we give an output. So there, then we say j value which is 0. So we want our value there. So then we provide j here as our value. Then we increment. So if we run this, so we are doing a nested while loop. So if we execute this, you can see what our code has done. So I value is 1. So I is 1. So if while I is less than 4, which one is less than 4, it will execute this. Int j, we have assigned it 1. So if while j is less than 2, which one is less than 2, it will also print j. So you see we have I value 1, j value 1, then I value 2, and j value 1. Then we don't have j printing 3, because when it executes while I is 3, then this code will not execute. So as you have seen, we used one while loop within another while loop to achieve nested while loop functionality in our application. So both while loops get executed and return the result based on how we have defined the condition. So another thing with while loop is we can see how in C# while loop with break statement. So we can actually exit or terminate the execution of a while loop immediately by using the break keyword. So from this statement, let's just remove this. So we can put in a condition. So we say if I is equals to, if I is equals to 2, then we want this statement to terminate. So execution will terminate. So sorry, these ones will not be there. So if we execute this, if I is equals to 2, then this program will exit. So you see, if I is, so it has the first execution found that I is 1, so it actually went through. So while on the second execution, it found that I is 2, so it actually exited. So if we just make this to 4, it will execute up to number 3. So you see, it has gone to I value is 1, I value is 2, and I value is 3. So when it found out that I is equals to 4, it actually terminated and exited. So whenever the variable I value becomes 4, the loop usually will terminate using the break statement. So this is how we use break statements with a while loop to terminate the loop's execution based on what we have defined. So another thing that you might need to understand is something called do while loop. So do while loop. Do while loop. So in C#, the do while loop is used to execute a block of statement until the specified expression returns true. So generally in C# the do while loop is the same as a while loop, but only the difference is while loop will execute the statement only when the defined condition returns true. But the do while loop will execute the statement at least once, because first it will execute the block of statement and then it will check the condition. So how is the syntax? So the syntax for do while loop is usually you use the do keyword, then this is the block of code to be executed, or the statement to execute, then it will execute this, then check the condition while, so it check the condition while the condition, if the condition is true, so this is where you put in the boolean expression. So this is the syntax of do while loop. So an example, so let's define here our variable int I, we assign it a value is 1. So do, so we want to execute our statements. Do give us an output console, console. Then inside here we say I value is, then we provide our value 0, then we supply it with I, then we increment this, we say I, then we check while I is less than 4 or equal, say less or equal to 4, then you see it will actually repeatedly execute this statement first before checking the condition. So if we execute this, you see it has actually done it. So it will execute that it will give us an output until y is less, that is I is less or equal to 4. So someone may be wondering what is the difference between these do while with while. So as I had just indicated, the do while loop is same as the which loop. The only difference is that while loop will execute the statement only when the defined condition is true. It will first check if this condition is true, then it will execute the defined statements. But now the do while loop will execute the statement first. It will execute the statement at least once, because before it actually it will actually execute the statement first at least once, because first it will execute the block of statement and then it will now check the condition. So the while loop first checks the condition before executing our statements, but the do while loop, it will execute the condition, then check it will execute the statements, then it will check our condition. So the do while loop starts with the do keyword followed by a block of statements, which is this one. And while the operator is now checking the condition, that is we have the boolean expression here. So here will return a true or false. So that is majorly a do while loop. So we can also do a nested do while loop. So for example, we have just done this. So inside here, after we have incremented this, we can do another do while loop. So do give another block of statements. So we say console, then we say j. So we can actually define another variable here. We say int j is equals to 1. Then you say console write j value is, so we supply our value, so the value of j, then we increment, so j incrementing, then while, so it will execute this until while only while j is less than 2. So that is a nested do while. So if we execute this, you'll see that it has actually repeatedly executed only while j is less than 2. You can see we don't have any value greater than 2 for j. So that is, if you've just seen this output, if you've just seen this output, you can see that we used one do while loop within another do while loop to achieve the nested do while loop functionality. So both the do while loops get executed and return the same result based on our condition. So another thing that you can also do is the do while loop with the break statement. So let's get rid of the nested loop. Then we can define int I is 1, then we run this, then we provide a condition. So if we say if I is equals to 3, then what do we want? We want this to terminate. So whenever the variable I becomes 3, then we terminate the loop using the break statement. So if we execute this, there we are. So you can see I value is 1, I value is 2. So the statement has actually terminated when it found out that I is equals to 3. So that is majorly how we use do while loop. So another thing that you might need to know about is the for each loop. So you can remove this. So use for each loop. So for each loop in C# the for each loop is useful to loop through each item in an array or a collection of objects to execute the block of statements repeatedly. So in C# for each loop will work with the collection of objects such as array, list. So we'll be able to look more about arrays and lists. So how do we do that? So the syntax for this is we use the for each keyword, then we provide the type of the variable name, then we use in the collection object, then we now execute, we provide the statements, the statement to execute. So we define for a for each loop with a collection of objects here and required variable name to access the collection of objects. So you'll actually have a required variable name. So here type is a built-in data type here. This is a built-in data type or a custom class type, and a variable name is a variable name to access the elements from these collection objects. So collection objects is used in the for each loops body. So to give an example about this for each loop, so we can define our array of strings. So you can say string, then this is a collection, so we need square brackets, then we say names. So these are names, collection of names. So we initialize this array, say string, then inside here we want to define the size of the number of elements. So we say it will be having 3 elements, and we actually supply it with our values. So we say James, then here we provide another value, Rose, and we say Kevin. So then we close this. So our array will be having 3 elements, that is James, Rose, and Kevin. So for each, so we want now to look through each of these elements. So we use for each to access. So we'll do that for each. Then we say string name. So this is the variable name. Then names is the collection of. So we created a string array object. So this is a string array object of names. Then we want to look through each of an array object using for each loop and assigning array elements to string variable name. So if we just do this and we say we want to output each name within the array. So we will actually learn more about arrays in our next videos. So keep in touch. So if we execute these, we expect an output of each of these elements. So you can see our code. So we have James, Rose, and Kevin as an output. So we have actually accessed each element within an array. So we have actually done a loop through each of element of the array and printed those values on the console window. So another thing, we can do a for each loop with lists. So we have done this with an array. So we can do a for each loop with a list. So like C# for each with arrays, we can use the for each loop with a list object to process each element in the list objects. But inside the for each loop, it won't allow us to modify or add or delete the list objects. So we can define our list. So I'll get away with our array. So we can just define our list here. We say list. So we use a list. Then we say names is equals to, we initialize new list, new list, then new list here, then we initialize the elements. So we say we provide our elements, James, then we say Kevin, then we say Amos, then we close this. So the list of names, so the new list, something not going on well there. So we need to import this. So if we just import that one, then we need something else. So we need to import so let's just using keywords. Using system dot collection dot generic. So that is it. So then we define list names equals to new list. We do this. Yes, install that. So let's see for each loop with a list. So we are going to define a list. So we'll use a list. Then we are going to define a list of our strings. That is our names. Then we supply our names. So So these ones, as you can see, we have done a definition of a list. Then we supply the names James, Kevin, Amos. So we want to loop through these names and write the name of every element within the list. So if we execute this, you can see we have the names. So James, Kevin, Amos there. So we can actually, we have actually looped through the list. So we use system collection generic namespace to access the list object and actually adding string elements to the list. So we use for it to loop through the items in the list to print them on the console window. So that is majorly about for each loop. So remember guys to subscribe, and our next video we are going to learn more about jump statements. That is the break statement, continue statement, go to, and return statement. So keep in touch, and remember to like and share our videos. Thank you, and see you in our next session.